Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. If you're just joining us, please make sure you hit that subscribe button because what I'm about to share with you today is absolutely crucial information that every single person on the immigration journey in the UK needs to know about. We're talking about massive changes that could affect hundreds of thousands of people currently living in this country on various visa routes. And I mean massive changes that will fundamentally alter how we think about settlement in the United Kingdom. Now, before we dive deep into this, I want to make something very clear from the outset. There has been a lot of panic, a lot of confusion, and honestly a lot of misinformation flying around on social media, on WhatsApp groups, on Telegram channels, everywhere you can imagine. People are sending messages saying the 10-year route is now in effect. People are saying if you haven't applied for your ILR, yet you've lost your chance. People are saying all sorts of things that are causing unnecessary stress and anxiety. So I'm here today to break down exactly what the Home Secretary actually said, what it means for you, and most importantly, what you need to do right now. Let me start by giving you the context of this announcement, because context is everything when we're trying to understand government policy. The Home Secretary stood up and delivered what can only be described as one of the most significant speeches on immigration policy we have seen in recent years. She talked about legal migration, she talked about asylum, she talked about settlement, and she laid out a vision for what the government wants the immigration system to look like moving forward. But here's the thing that everyone needs to understand, and I cannot stress this enough: wanting to do something and actually implementing it are two completely different things in the world of UK immigration law. So what exactly did the Home Secretary say? Well, she started by painting a picture of what has happened in recent years with migration to the UK. She talked about how between 2021 and the 2024 general election, the country saw net migration of 2.5 million people. Just think about that number for a second. 2.5 million people. She said that means at least 1 in every 30 people in the UK today arrived during that 4-year period. In just 4 years, this country experienced levels of migration it had previously seen across 4 decades. That's the scale we're talking about here. But it wasn't just the numbers that concerned her. She went into detail about the nature of that migration, particularly focusing on what she called the scandal of lowering skills requirements for people who arrived on the health and social care visa. She talked about how fraud was rife, with phony care providers being created to draw people to this country on false promises of work. And here's where it gets really interesting for those of you who are currently in the UK on various visa routes. She said that absent any action over the next 5 years, some 350,000 low-skilled workers and their dependents will qualify for settlement. Now, when these people get settlement, they gain access to welfare, free healthcare, and social housing. The government has estimated, based on findings from the Migration Advisory Committee, that the lifetime cost to the taxpayer will be £10 billion. £10 billion. She said that figure would be paid for by working people in this country. It would mean ever longer waits for the 1.3 million people on the social housing list, and yet more pressure on the National Health Service. She called it an affront to the idea of fairness within the migration system. So that's the problem as the government sees it. Now let's talk about the solution they're proposing. This is where everyone needs to pay very close attention because the details matter enormously. The Home Secretary said that the government is embarking on what she described as some of the most significant reforms to migration, both legal and asylum, in a generation. For legal migration, the focus is on ensuring they are attracting those who can and will contribute to the country, that migration levels are manageable, and that they're attracting high-skilled workers while introducing new controls. Here's a really important point she made that I think got lost in all the panic about the 10-year route. She said, and I quote, "For those who come to this country who can contribute to our national life, I am clear they should have a path to settlement and ultimately citizenship. I want people to put down roots in this country and to contribute to our national life." So she's not saying nobody can settle. She's not saying we're closing the door. What she's saying is that the privilege of living in this country forever, as she put it, should be earned and not automatic. Now we get to the part that everyone has been talking about, the settlement rules. The Home Secretary laid out very clearly what principles they put into their consultation. First principle, the qualifying period for settlement should move as a norm from 5 years to 10 years. As a norm, not in every case, not for everyone, but as a norm. Second principle, there will be certain conditions that must be met in order to qualify. These include a clean criminal record, no debt to the taxpayer, a history of being in work and paying taxes, and higher standards of English language. On the English language requirement, they've already made the first change. She announced that a year from now, those who arrived on a visa and are now seeking settlement in this country will need to speak English as a foreign language to a level standard. She made a little joke saying that a working knowledge of Shakespeare and Chaucer is very welcome, but will not be a condition of settling in this country, but command of the English language itself will be. So that's happening. That's definite. A year from now, the English language requirement goes up significantly. But here's where it gets really interesting, and where I think a lot of people have misunderstood what's being proposed. The Home Secretary said that their intention, subject to consultation, is that the point at which settlement is possible will now vary. It won't be the same for everyone. Some people will earn settlement at or earlier than 5 years, including public servants like doctors and nurses, and those who are contributing the most to the nation's finances. Others will have to wait longer before they can apply for settlement. So we're looking at a tiered system. If you're a doctor, if you're a nurse, if you're someone the government considers to be contributing significantly to the nation's finances, you might still get settlement at 5 years or even earlier. But if you're in a different category, you might have to wait longer. How much longer? That's what the consultation is supposed to determine. The government has proposed 10 years as a norm, but they haven't finalized anything yet. Now here comes the part that has caused the most panic and the most concern, and rightly so. The Home Secretary said it is entirely consistent with their values to address the challenge posed by the impending settlement of hundreds of thousands of low-skilled workers and their dependents who arrived between 2022 and 2024. And then she said something that sent shockwaves through immigrant communities. She said that means applying any rule changes to those who are in the UK today, but have not yet received settled status. Let me say that again because it's crucial. Applying any rule changes to those who are in the UK today, but have not yet received settled status. This is what's called retrospective application of new rules. Normally, in UK immigration, when rules change, they apply to new applicants, not to people who are already here under existing rules. But what the Home Secretary is suggesting is that these new rules, when they come in, would apply even to people who are already in the UK counting their years towards settlement under the current 5-year rule. She justified this by saying that if they don't do this, they will see a £10 billion drain on public finances and further strain on public services like housing and healthcare. She called it an affront to fairness, an affront to every family waiting for social housing, to those on NHS waiting lists, and to British taxpayers who will foot the bill. So that's what was announced. Now let me tell you what was not announced, and this is absolutely critical. There was no statement of changes, there was no effective date, there was no publication of new immigration rules, there was no laying of statutory instruments before Parliament. There was nothing that would actually make any of this law or policy that the Home Office has to follow right now. What we have is a speech outlining principles and intentions. The Home Secretary herself said multiple times that they are currently reviewing responses to their consultation. She said their intention subject to consultation is that the point at which settlement is possible will vary. Subject to consultation. Those 3 words are doing a lot of work there. It means they haven't decided yet. It means they're still gathering feedback. It means they're still analyzing what people have said in response to their proposals. In UK immigration law, nothing changes until there is a formal statement of changes published by the Home Office. These statements of changes are laid before Parliament. They go through a process, and only then do they become the rules that caseworkers have to follow when making decisions on applications. Until that happens, the current rules remain in force. And the current rules say that most people can apply for indefinite leave to remain after 5 years of lawful residence in the UK on a qualifying visa route. So what does this mean for you if you're currently in the UK on a visa and counting down to your settlement application? First of all, don't panic. I know that's easier said than done, but panic helps nobody. The 5-year route is still there right now. If you're eligible to apply for settlement under current rules, those rules haven't changed yet. The keyword there is yet. Second, stay informed. This is why subscribing to channels like mine is so important, because when that statement of changes does come out, when the government does publish the new rules, you need to know about it immediately. You need to understand what it means for your specific situation. Immigration law is complex, and these changes, if they go through as proposed, will be some of the most significant we've seen in years. Third, if you're close to being eligible for settlement under current rules, it might be worth considering whether you want to apply sooner rather than later. Now, I'm not saying rush into an application you're not ready for. I'm not saying apply before you meet the requirements. What I'm saying is if you're going to meet the requirements in the next few months, it might be worth making sure you apply before any new rules come into effect. But you need to take proper advice on your specific circumstances. Fourth, understand that if these changes do go through, there will likely be legal challenges. The idea of applying new rules retrospectively to people already in the UK is controversial. There are questions about whether it's fair, whether it's legal, whether it violates legitimate expectations. Immigration lawyers are already discussing this, and if the government does try to implement retrospective changes, you can bet there will be court cases. Let me also address something the Home Secretary said about new safe and legal routes for asylum seekers, because this is part of the bigger picture. She announced they'll be opening a new student refugee route starting in autumn 2027, a new work route, and expansion of community sponsorship. The government is trying to show that while they're tightening some routes, they're opening others. They want to be seen as fair, as compassionate, but also as in control of the system. The bottom line is this. Yes, significant changes are coming to settlement rules in the UK. Yes, the government wants to move from 5 years to 10 years as the norm. Yes, they want to introduce higher requirements including better English and evidence of contribution. Yes, they're even talking about applying these changes to people already here. But no, none of this is in effect yet. No, we don't have final rules. No, we don't have an implementation date. And no, you should not assume the worst until we see what actually gets published. I'll be monitoring this situation very closely, and I will update you the moment anything official is published. Make sure you're subscribed, make sure notifications are turned on, and please share this video with anyone you know who might be affected by these potential changes. Knowledge is power, especially in immigration matters. Stay calm, stay informed, and we'll get through this together. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next update.